Welcome to BAM PFA. And I am Stan Lai, and it's Thursday, so welcome all of you who are coming from outside the class, and of course, welcome all of you in the class. Sandra Woodall is an extraordinary designer who's worked many, many years in the Bay Area. And I've had the good fortune to work with her since 2000. So together we're working on my newest play, which some of you will see in a workshop presentation April 26th to 28th called Ago, which we'll talk about. Because what we want to talk about today is, in a way, a culmination of a lot of the things you've been seeing in this class, which are how artists collaborate. I'm sure it's a question that many of you have, because you can't figure out how people with strange and quirky personalities, I'm talking about the two of us, of course, how we get together, how we get along, how we argue, how we finally arrive at conclusions and actually execute them. It is a bit of an enigma, and I find in the artistic world, I think as with anywhere, when you find collaborators who you can work well with, you keep working with them. And that's been the case with Sandra and I over the years. We first met, Sandra designs sets and costumes, and she's been perhaps more well known for her costume design in the Bay Area. The current San Francisco Ballet production that just closed a couple of nights ago was designed by Sandra. And she's also done a lot of work for the Bolshoi Ballet, which loves her costumes. And this is really, really specialized stuff. And you'll see some of in the slides, you will see how it's not just creating a nice looking costume. It has to fit the dancer like a glove. And the dancer has to dance without feeling that costume, no matter how heavy it is. And Sandra is a master at doing things like that. So she's worked all over the world, and you'll get a sampling of some of her work. Now, the first work we did together was in 2000, and this is A Dream Like a Dream. This is not the production that she and I worked on. That's the original production was a school production at actually the original production was here at Berkeley in February 2000, a workshop presentation, sounds familiar, of A Dream Like a Dream. It was 3.5 hours in room 7 Zellerbach Hall, Zellerbach Auditorium. It turned out to be an 8-hour play. At the time I knew it, and I just checked my program notes from 2000, and it said this is envisioned to be a 7 or 8 hour play. And today you will be seeing 3.5 hours of it. And so we actually showed it on over 4 nights at Zellerbach. So a half, so there was like 2 hours each evening. So we did it twice. In other words, we did a workshop production of an 8-hour play here, and with a special configuration of theater we can only call it theater in the surround. I know it sounds more extravagant than it looks like, but that's what it is, with the actors moving around the audience and telling stories. And as I said in my first lecture way back in January, the whole conceit of the 8-hour work is that to really understand a person's story, you must understand the stories of other people in this person's life. And so the play keeps digressing into another main character, and then another main character. And then it goes from Taipei, from a hospital in Taipei, we move to Paris, and we move to Shanghai, and then we go to Shanghai in the past, and then Paris in the past. And finally, through an assortment of main characters, you get to understand exactly, well, not exactly, but you get to get a feeling of what happened to the original main character. So through the lives of a patient, doctor, and then through this woman who was found as an old woman in Shanghai, but she used to be a prostitute in 1930s Shanghai. So there's always at least two people performing the same main character. So this is the production from Beijing in 2013, which is much more elaborate and which is running till today. As I said, this performance is very unique in that it doesn't seem like it's for everyone. It's 8 hours. You sit in the middle on a swiveling chair, turning as the play goes along. And the tickets are very expensive, so expensive I'm embarrassed. They're like $600 to see this show in Beijing or Shanghai. And they sell out in seconds. Whenever we announce the performance, they're gone. Tickets are gone. So I'm like I said, I'm embarrassed about that. But of course, I understand the reason is that we have some very big A-list stars in the cast. So our audience, our fans of these movie stars will sit there for 8 hours searching for them in the cast and being very fulfilled when they see them, because when they see them, they're that close. They're like 1 yard away. So just some photos from the production that we're doing these days. I'm going to revive it in Hong Kong this summer. If you're around in July, August, September, we'll be performing in Hong Kong. And then our natural performance dates are Christmas in Beijing, and then January in Shanghai, and we usually choose one more city. So when I first did this in 2000 in Taipei, at the Taipei National Institute of the Arts, which Sandra was visiting as a Fulbright scholar, and now the name of the school is the National Taipei University of the Arts. We did the first full 8-hour version of A Dream Like a Dream. And this is the ending of the show today. And Sandra and she was a very, very integral part of really understanding this new way of staging theater. Because I got this inspiration while writing the play in India and watching pilgrims circumambulate around the sacred stupa at Bodh Gaya, and realizing that as a Buddhist pilgrim, you always circle the sacred spot in a clockwise direction. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but that's the way it's done. So if you see anybody going counterclockwise, you know they're sort of not into it, So, but you see just this flow of people moving around these important Buddhist spots of pilgrimage, and they all keep the sacred object in the middle. And to me, I was thinking, what is the sacred object for us theater artists? And of course, it's the audience. Our audience is our sacred object, and so we should be moving around them. And that's how I got the inspiration to make this configuration, which I don't think was ever, I'm sure somebody did this in the history of the world, but I'm not aware of it. And since 2000, when it was invented by us, I don't see any other people using it except ourselves. And we're doing it again for a go, because I find that it's a very interesting configuration where when you're sitting in the middle in this place called the Lotus Pond, that's what the audience has called it over the years. I didn't coin it. In the Lotus Pond, when you sit there and you have people circling around you, it's a very transformative and immersive experience. So you're there, you're transported into a different reality. I had friends come who had never seen live theater in their lives. And all we do is we just walk around, and with a sort of a sound change, and suddenly we're in Paris. And it's the same people. And there's no French people in the cast, but then you suddenly, there you are, you're in Paris. And they said, how did you do that? How did you bring us to Paris? I said, that's not me, that's your mind. And your mind is the most precious tool for we theater people. It's the human imagination. If we can bring you somewhere by yourself, we don't need to build that set. It's actually quite economic, huh? Yeah. So
in some ways,
yes.
It's economic.
Yeah. So Sandra was very important in sort of letting me get my bearings as I was working in this new way, and then also showing me what she would be thinking of this spatial arrangement, how we could use it in different ways, and that's how we got to the final production. I'm gonna give the microphone over to Sandra to talk about her work now, which also includes my work because we work together so much. So the next slide is yours. So here we go. And we go to the next one or what?
Sure. I think for me, Stan really gave me the opportunity to begin to really think about this quality that we're calling organic design. And I think for today, I've really focused on what that means. It's been wonderful to try to really think of what that means and how much you've helped me sort of distill out what that means. Because in theater...
Well, let me say something first, because I don't think I showed you that. I think you brought that to the table, because I recall in 2000 doing Dream Like a Dream, our scenic designers at my school who were supposed to design the show, they were not connected with me at all. And Sandra, coming from, as a Fulbright scholar, she was in rehearsal every day, not understanding Mandarin Chinese and asking for a translation of every single word, And so like the translator's going, oh, but that's not important. No, I want to know. Oh, Stan needs to go to the bathroom. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's Sandra working. She wants to know everything.
That's true.
And so, she asked the designers, and maybe you can correct me on this quote, why aren't you guys in rehearsal? And they say, oh, Stan knows what he wants. In the end, he'll just tell us what he wants and we'll do it for him, And Sandra said, that's not true. You guys have never worked on an 8-hour show that changes every day in rehearsal? Well, I have, she said that. Is that true?
That's so true.
And that show was Angels in America.
That's so true. Yes, I had finished doing Angels in America, and I have to say, Tony was writing the play as we were trying to produce it, building it, thinking about it. And in the case of Stan, the same thing happened, but I had that experience. So I felt these are the wings from the original production of Angels in America. They've just brought out a book, and they went back to the music these wings are at the Design Museum. And
you made.
Yes, I made these wings, and they were the original angel wings. Anyway, I think that the important element that I discovered, or that I've thought about in terms of organic design, is the fact that everything must develop together, and that must include all elements of the theater to make it successful. In an 8-hour piece, there is so much work in terms of the number of people, the changes, the areas, the locations that Stan builds in, and we have to find a way to bring that to life, not without resistance. The only way to do it is in rehearsal. And one thing I must say about Dream that was so impressive is in that circling, and as the scenes are shown, because the way we structured the theater, we did have the seats in the middle, but the theater we worked in had a balcony on the sides. It's the type of theater where you have the 3 sides.
It's like a box, but there's some balconies on 2 sides.
Yeah, narrow balconies. Yeah. I think one of the theaters in Berkeley has that. And so we used that as well for places. So when you'd have a scene, and this was so beautiful because it really felt like a dream, a couple of characters would be talking about that memory, and it wouldn't reverse the order, but maybe just slightly to the back. That would be being played on the second balcony, and you would just see the image. And so there's a way in which it's a little bit like dance.
Yeah, I remember Sandra was saying in that theater in Taipei, saying, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't have your eyes. I don't see that." She saw what was actually, I think, a window open in the very, very backstage on the upstairs and bringing in a little light. And this is something that maybe only at a certain angle you could see, and I saw it. And what does Sandra mean? Does she want me to incorporate that little speck of light into this production? I'm sorry. But anyway, what it does is it brings you to other thoughts, and it brings you to a moment where you think you can use something like that in the design.
Exactly. I think it's so important to understand. I mean, for me, it's so important to understand when I'm designing what can evoke a feeling. I'm most interested in the quality of evoking a feeling in the audience. As Stan says, the audience is the most important to us. And I feel your words are so poetic and your concepts are so vast in a good way, not tied down to reality like this glass of water. And to me, it's important to underscore and support the ideas and the extra ideas that come from the juxtapositions from the feeling, not the illustration of the idea. So for me, I began to see that's what I think of as organic design. And I also realize that having a lot of experience in dance allowed me to be more comfortable with a theater piece being developed this way. Because traditionally, theater pieces, you're handed a script, it's analyzed, the director decides whether it'll be done realistically or abstractly, and you go about doing it. There's a lot of requirements. It can be, how many glasses you need or whatever. But in the case of Dream or Angels or Ago or even National Day, it's being created as we go, all of us. So the example of the little window suggests something to you, which suggests something to me, which suggests something to you. And hopefully all of you feel those textures and qualities and come to your own thoughts.
And I'd like to add something is that as a designer, actually Sandra is also contributing to the script as the script is being built, because her input then sometimes can make me think, well, I can think of this scene in a different way. And when I think of it in a different way, it becomes something different, or I need to add a scene, something happens, and the script changes, So it's really organic. And as I said before in this class, I really think that creativity, if you're writing a play, often it feels more like finding that play. It's not like you're actually writing something in thin air, but you're searching for it in the thin air. It's there, and you have to find it. And when you find it, that's the feeling of the organic feeling comes from finding something that actually has to be there, should be there, must be there.
Yes, it feels right.
Let's see a couple of your... Yeah, this is from the... Sandra and I worked together on this centennial celebration for the 100th anniversary of the Republic of China, Taiwan. It was an immense undertaking that we did. That was a very, very interesting experiment because it's a long story. Anyway, it was a event that I chose not to do, but then was in the end sort of forced to do.
Well, I was glad you did it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
one of the things
and I was glad I did it.
It was very amazing. I will speak just a moment to it, and that's the fact that you wrote and composed all the songs. It was a musical, so there was singing, there was dancing, and there was a kind of story, but not a story that I really knew well. But it had some relationship to Taiwan and China, and
well, it was coincidentally, it was called Dreamers, and it was about a dance troupe trying to win a prize in contemporary Taiwan. But then we flash back to the real dreamers who were the fathers of the revolution of China in 1911, who actually overturned the Qing dynasty and founded the republic. And so those crazy guys, that was what the whole thing was about.
So for me, what the essence, well, the challenges. It was done in an outdoor theater, and that was equipped
With nothing.
in a strange way, and it needed something, but that something for me turned out to be using the space. I wanted to use the space again in a unique way. There was a stage. There was a potential orchestra pit that I decided to fill with water, and these trees were kind of the essence of the piece, in the sense that Stan had the idea that there was a tree. It was planted, when they first arrived,
Right.
and that slowly this tree should grow and become a giant tree, in a way giving the feeling of the growth of Taiwan.
Yeah, I created a sort of a myth in the script, because there's the main event of the flashback is this uprising in Guangzhou, where 72 young people gave their lives for the revolution, and it's well known. And then I made the myth of having a 73rd who wasn't actually recorded by history, and the descendant of the 73rd lives in this building in Taipei. I think it was a nice story that we
It was
put
a wonderful
together.
story. The challenges of the theater and everything were solved with having actually flat scenic pieces that just had little dimension, kind of bas relief, and so everything is suggestive of the places in Taiwan, and you'll see in the other slides as it begins to grow.
Yeah. And this is the last one.
I had to do a vertical so you'd be able to see the water. And so in this case, the tree grows. If we were just focusing on this, you would see that the buildings turn and change so that they transform into other areas. They had ancient China or Taiwan and the modern era. And so everything must be 2, 3, 4 different.
Yeah, the whole outer external view of Taipei becomes the internal view of a warehouse in Guangzhou, where all these people are secretly working toward this revolution, and they all, in the end, the martyrs all fall into the water, and the water becomes red. It's pretty bloody, but it's quite moving, I think.
And in that way, I think this is, for me, it's an idea again that shows how organic design really needs to. We actually grew this piece together in
Yes.
that way. We saw that there was a space for water. We talked about that, and you were interested, and there were many elements that actually brings this to be almost a site-specific piece.
It was a mission impossible, in the middle of which the composer passed away. So we really had to pull it all together, and we did. So, next.
So again, my idea of organic design, as we're talking about it, and you can see our relationship, we really function that way. But I mean to say that I think for a successful piece, it needs to be throughout the organization. And so certainly from the side of the designer, that needs to, organic design needs to extend to an understanding and collaboration with the technical people. And this is an example.
This is 2002,
This
the
is-
first professional production of A Dream Like a Dream in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong Repertory Theatre.
And they were wonderful to work with. Their technical department, we had a small theater. I mean, it's a great theater, very well equipped. They had a show that closed at 10 o'clock that night. They had 24 hours to completely tear the theater apart, take all the seats out, put our seats in the middle, and put our scenery in, and bring. We started rehearsal at noon that day. 24 hours for them to do this. And without collaboration between us on the technical side, artistic side, design, the technical people in the theater, and the technical people that build the scenery, because the scenery was built in another city, all came together and just like an amazing, I don't know, amazing crew. Work, take a nap in the chair, work, and be ready by 10. It was amazing. That's also organic design.
Yeah, yeah. That was wonderful. Yeah, we're going to do it again this summer. Same, actually, Eddie's still there, the same,
That's
same
wonderful.
technical director. It's wonderful. Let me,
So for me,
I'll show the next slide. Yeah.
sure. As I said, to me, or I began to realize through our years of work and my work on dance, that dance really develops in an organic way for me. The only way I have found to work well with dance is to go to many rehearsals and understand the feeling. I think that choreographers, I really identify with this because I think that choreographers may have a lot of conversation about concept, but actually they really speak to you when they're in the studio, when they have the dancer, and then they express themselves in that way. And I think in every form we work in this collaborative way, whether it's theater, dance, or performance art, the discipline is what really speaks. And dance is certainly like that. In this case, this is Be Here Now. It's a Smuin Ballet. It was a celebration of the 50 years for from the Summer of Love. And the choreographer is Trey McIntyre, and actually wasn't even born in the Summer of Love. And so we had many conversations, which were...
You were here.
I was in
San Francisco.
I did.
Yes.
I was there for the Summer of Love. But he and I had many conversations about my experience or his idea of what the experience could have been like. But the real work we both felt was not to illustrate or try to create the memory in people so that it becomes a sentimental idea, but to really comment on it. And the organic idea there is, for me, it's the finding a way to evoke the feeling and continue the conversation to the present. So here you will see that the texture and the quality of the costumes suggest the period, but none of them are really the clothes we wore. And clearly the color is not. The predominance of purple was not in that electric way that you saw in the slide earlier. If you go back, this is the kind of color we have after the computer, after we all started looking at the screen. It is not the earth tones that we wore at the time. But yet, it feels like the period, and many people, many audience people told me how much they felt the ideas. They remembered it, but they also continued and felt the present day as well.
What are those things?
Those are meteors.
Okay.
You know, okay, I'll tell you what that comes from since you asked. The choreographer was really interested, since even though he wasn't born in the Summer of Love, he has experienced some of the things that the Summer of Love brought to us all. That quality of something that just flashes by your perception, maybe in a slightly altered state of reality. And so he really wanted to create that quality. So those are pieces that they throw out from the wings and it snaps back. And so the dancer, you know, like you think it's, and then they dash them out towards the audience and they snap back, just giving you that moment. It just happened to be caught, as you see here, this one flying out from the wings. The clothes are all good dance clothes, nothing like what we would have worn, but suggest the characters. Again, this is another example. I feel that is an example of organic design underscored by in the area of concept and, of course, concept, but the evoking of an idea. In this case, this is King Arthur that was done by Cincinnati Ballet, and I put this in to suggest how organic design sometimes really has to use texture and sensitivity to fabric, because ballet has very strict requirements in terms of the movement and that's the whole quality of expression. But King Arthur is a medieval story and requires knights and heavy garments. And so that's almost the opposite of ballet. And so I feel that you have to use an organic approach to solve these challenges. Maybe the next...
Sorry, it's not very good resolution. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry too. But this is an example. I think you can, even with the bad resolution, you can feel that that they're knights, but they move easily. They're not restricted at all in their movement, and it comes. I was thinking what to do, because it can't certainly be armor. So we created felted fabric. This is all handmade fabric, felted, painted, textured, and shaped so that you feel it's a knight. I don't think there's any question that it's a knight, but it's completely workable and expressive in terms of ballet. The first slide, the red one, is an example of the king, and you may feel the quality of a medieval costume. The lines, if you know the style of medieval art, it reflects the quality of those paintings and those mosaics, but yet expresses every element of his body and movement. For me, this is Winter Rising. We worked on together. It's such a beautiful piece.
This is a play written by a woman named Wan Fang, who is the daughter of Cao Yu, who was like we would call the father of the modern Chinese theater. He wrote in the 1930s and 40s, and of course after the Communist Revolution of 49. But his major work was done before 49, and he's like an icon in China. And his daughter, also a playwright, approached me and said, "Would you direct?" I don't direct too many plays of other people. I'm too busy with my own stuff. But it's a very difficult subject matter. It's about two old men. Shall we see the next one first? Yeah. And this is in the 1990s, and they are in Beijing, and they are trying to come to terms with what they did to each other during the Cultural Revolution in 1966. So it's a kind of a taboo subject. But written by Wan Fang, she made it through the censors. And actually, it's a really beautiful work, because in 66, the guy on the left basically turned in the guy on the right and ruined his life, ruined his family, killed his family. His whole life was screwed. And then 30 years later, the guy on the right is publishing his memoirs, and he needs the affirmation. Can you please, have a look at the memoirs, and if they're okay, I'm going to publish them. And the guy is not okay. It's like 30 years later, sorry, I'm not going to forgive you for what you did to me, and so you can't write this. You just didn't say anything of what you really did. You really have to come out and tell what you did. And the whole play is about these two old men and their struggle later in life for what they did to each other.
It is a very beautiful piece, and
Sorry, this one too. I added that for you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think that the piece is so beautiful, and I think for me the element that I focused on was the psychological quality. That it needed to have a quality that showed the two houses, but showed also the sense, for me, it was a sense of real foundation, but the reality that in that foundation, under the stability of the suggested foundation or house, or it's really a metaphor for the, even in the culture, was a burning fire, like there's a fire in the basement that's ready to eventually explode. The piece is very delicate, but needs also a lot of strength. It's not just lightness. It's lightness, it's love, and it's also the like crystallization of the emotion. It's like they are bound in a certain way. They should give up, but yet when one or the other of them has a problem, like one of them is having a heart problem, the other one is right there to help him.
Sandra designed 7 scrims that can come out in any configuration, and we tested this material so that we could project onto it. We could project images, we could project text. This text that you see is running text. And this is, if we're talking about organic design, I'd like to say a few words about this play. Because the play originally was didn't have this title, The Winter Journey. It was called Confession. Yeah. And I said, and I told the playwright, I said, I'm happy to work with you as director, but I'm also a playwright. May I add my 2 cents worth when necessary? And she said, fine. I mean, she respected that, and we had a really wonderful collaboration together. In her script, she has a 3rd character, and the 3rd character is just called Schubert. And then Schubert comes in and out and talks to one of the guys who's a classical music fan. And I said, so what? And it says Schubert's music plays. And I said, which piece were you thinking of? And she said, I don't know, piano? Okay. And so I went and did my homework on a lot of piano sonatas, etc. Didn't really feel right. And then I said, look, can we sing? I mean, can we use the cycle of songs from the Winter Horizon, this Winter Journey? It's a very dark piece by Schubert. And the words are very dark, but they're so spot on to their situation. She said, sure. And so we have now this guy, and Sandra put him in all white. And of course we have an all white piano, which we couldn't afford to. We built a, we built a plywood piano and put a little keyboard inside. Yeah. So, I mean, everything you see in this set, which Sandra designed, is really, really personally okayed by her. She does everything. I mean, you look at the chairs, they're picked by her. The tables are picked by her. Even the texture of the walls, she goes to the shop and she shows the painters how to do it. So it's like when I work with Sandra, it's so easy. I don't have to do anything, But then she supplies me with all these toys, like the 7 different pieces of gauze. How do I use them? In what configuration? And then we realize when they're coming down, they float because they're not heavy. They're not like a normal scrim, which won't float.
It's opera net.
Yeah.
For any of you set designers.
Yeah, and so we needed to buy different samples of materials and then put projections on them, see if they would work. And so what you're seeing now is the Chinese translation of the German. He sings in German, but then we give you the translation, but it's rolling in an artistic way. And so it doesn't feel like you're reading subtitles or anything like that. Yeah. Okay.
We worked on a play not last year, the year before.
A couple years ago.
Yeah. It's called Riding in Water. I think I wasn't sure if it was 89 around that you did it the first time.
No, 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
At any rate, I wasn't involved in it, and
right.
Stan had written it, but then we decided. Stan decided that he was going to revisit it and almost rewrite it.
Yeah, right.
And so, again, we began to develop something kind of simultaneously. I mean, I read the initial script and I had a feeling from it. Then we had a couple of wonderful conversations, and Naichi was there. We all agreed that it's about perception. And so in this piece, I really tried to work with the idea of perception. There are many reflections. There are many reflections. There are sets of windows. And in a way, within our theater, I say our theater, Stan's theater in Shanghai, no seat had the same view because of the way that the windows work. And I felt that suggests an idea of just how life is. And I felt that also reflected what you were talking about.
Yeah, I wrote this play. I was asked to do a new play in Hong Kong in 2009, just to show them how I do it, just like I'm doing here with A Go. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, zero idea. I just finished The Village. And before The Village, I'd just done a play called Light Years, which was about 50 years of history in China. They were both huge plays. And so I went to Hong Kong with a just totally empty brain. First rehearsal, I said, I want to be honest with you. I really don't know what I'm going to do. Then I walked out for lunch into Hong Kong. It was early January, it was 2009, the worst moment for the financial world, and the center of the Asian financial world is Hong Kong. And you can just feel it on the street. Was just, everyone was so, I mean, no one was smiling. Zero smiles in all of Hong Kong. I was just looking and I said, wow, what happened here? And so I said, let's start writing a play about what it means to be happy. And it turned out to be a play basically about a man. In the recent reincarnation, we cut out a lot of stuff we did in Hong Kong and concentrated on the main story, which is this man who is a happiness coach, and he has no idea what happiness is. He doesn't know his parents, and so he meets this little girl on this island outside of Hong Kong. And throughout, as the play moves along, and I'll spoil it since you're not going to see this unless you come to China, you start to wonder who this girl is, and it turns out the girl is his mother when she was a girl. Okay, so he meets his mother when she was a girl, and then learns that his mother is actually an abused child. She's being kept as a prisoner in the house, in the family house. So basically that's the story. He learns, and he can't really figure out how he's going to tell her. So anyway, he tries to give her as good a time as possible, because he has no idea how he's going to meet her next, because it's such a fluke that he does. So we work with these huge windows that Sandra designed, and this set of windows moves upstage, downstage, and it's quite striking. In the end, when the people, the main character, finds actually in the house this little room that his mother lived in all her life, these are moments for the designer to really help, because the director, I mean, don't think that the director always knows how to stage it, or the playwright. And I'm the playwright and director, and don't think I know how to stage it once I wrote it. And so I rely on Sandra's input a lot for things like these. Okay, let's go on to talk about what we're doing now. Right now, I'm here to do a new play. And this play is one of the strangest things I've ever experienced writing, because I really feel that I know what I want to do, but I don't. So it's like it's been in my mind since 2012. I've checked my files and they go back to 2012, my first remarks about what I wanted to do. And when 3 years ago I just decided there was time, Shannon Jackson invited me to come for this semester to teach here at Berkeley, to teach creativity and to also work on this play. This is what I had in mind. Stories from scriptures, particularly the Jataka tales from the 3rd century, which are kind of like Aesop's fables. And I was thinking to work with Sandra and to develop beautiful large animal puppets or whatever. I mean, I would give a lot of freedom for her to figure out what they would look like, but just beautiful like elephants or things on stage. It was a very visual thing I was thinking of doing. Then I sort of fell out of love with the Jataka tales because I felt that they're like Aesop's fables. You know, it's like I don't think there's anyone stages Aesop's fables, do they? I haven't heard of it because it's probably not gonna succeed because they're kind of simple. I don't mean anything negative about that. Anyway, it's just that as a theater piece, I always felt I wanted to weave together stories I'd heard from my own life in the Buddhist practice of amazing stories that I'd heard. And so when I came here, when I arrived and met all of you for the first time in January, I still had no idea what I was going to do. At the time, I was thinking of a lot of things. One of them was a delightful story which I shared with Sandra called The Prince and the Zombie. And this is Tibetan folk tales about this prince who learns magic and then he gets into trouble. And anyway, he has to capture this zombie. And the instructions are you capture the zombie, bring him back to this old master, and then you're free. But the zombie will keep talking to you, and you cannot talk to him. All right? If you say anything to him, he's back in where he was, and you're going to have to capture him again. So the zombie tells the most incredible stories. And of course, the prince who is lugging the zombie along through these deserts and mountains, and then finally he turns around and said, "Wow, that was incredible." And then the zombie's gone, you know. So story after story, I thought this would be a charming way to do a play. And so I was working very hard on that and also weaving contemporary stories into that. And then for a moment, again, I fell out of love with that. It's sort of like, sure, we could do that, you know, but what did I really want to do? And I thought of some stories I'd heard, and I've heard a lot of incredible stories in my life, I must say, because of my because of getting to know a lot of Tibetan friends and being immersed in the Tibetan culture, you hear just such incredible stories that to them are just normal. And for us, this must be the stuff of like science fiction or, you know, crazy, you know, who knows what, incredible imagination. But there was one story that caught my mind. One of my teachers, his father was a renowned master. And he had actually gone to this place, which they called the Pure Land. And the legend has it that there are many Pure Lands that are hidden in this world. And with the right circumstances, you can find it. They're there. We just can't see them because of our attachments, our delusions, but they're there. And if you're clear of all those attachments and illusions, you can find it. And so my teacher's father actually, he told me the story of this expedition that they went to, and they actually got in. It was a peach blossom land, let's say, or a Shangri-La or whatever, but amazing place where the only description I got was that all of the sounds were like mantras. So everywhere was just so harmonious and beautiful, and everything just, the plants just grew, I mean, crops just grew by themselves, and if you were hungry, you just grab something and eat it. And even the animals were all chanting mantras, you know, so it was that kind of a place. So then I was directed to a book about an expedition of this called One Step from Heaven, about a similar expedition in the 1960s where everyone was going with this Tibetan master to go to find this Pure Land in Sikkim. Same story. And then the thing was, if you wanted to go, you had to wait for the moment, and then when they say go, you go, and you just, that's it. You're prepared to leave this life, everything you have, your house, your family, everything. You just go, and you just bring a few things that you need for the journey, which is a trek in the mountains, and then when you find the place, you're there, and that's you're set. You're set for the rest of your life. So over 100 people went with this guy. And all these people were willing to just give up everything and just go at moment's notice. And so that's what they did. And it turned out tragically. They didn't find it. They didn't make it. And these stories were stuck in my mind. And so after I got here, after I started teaching creativity in this class, I started formulating the outline for a go. Let me show you some of the notes that I have over the years. This is just something I drew up from my computer. These are like running notes that whenever I'm inspired, I just, in the past, we would have real notebooks and just scribble on them. But now we have computers, and so this is my running notebook for a go. If you saw all my notes for this sketch, it's like 10 pages of like this, all sorts of stuff. But let's look at the second one, the woman who can sense the aura of everyone who has been here before. This is a character that's stuck in my mind, and she's in the play. We call her Space now. She is so overwhelmed every day she cannot move and moves to a secluded place in the mountains. I don't know how, I just thought of a person like this. Maybe she's sort of a combination of many people that I've met in the Tibetan culture. And just someone who's able to see the past and to see, like, let's say in this space, they would be seeing all of the people who ever had walked through this space, whatever it was before. It would just overwhelm you. Let's look at this character called Time, and he does nothing, and we do have a character called Time. And then the character burning paper on the side of the road, this is a person I bike, when I'm in Shanghai, I bike to work from my apartment to my theater, and often it's late at night when I get home. So when I'm biking through the former French concession, I saw this man, and he's just burning paper at the side of the road. And I saw him 3 times. I mean, I just bumped into him 3 different times at the same spot. And of course, it's very sad when someone is, in Chinese culture, when someone is burning that paper, that means somebody died there, so just seeing that, these are the things that stick in your mind. And, oh, this is late at night, and this guy, he came out, and who is he burning the paper money to, or whatever. Simple thing like that. I mean, to a playwright, then that it just sticks with you. And as I said before in this class, these are the things that don't necessarily lead to any magical moment, or they don't lead to an idea about a play, but they're just there in your mind, and they become part of the files that you keep. And then when the moment of creativity actually happens, then they jump out and they become part of the story, of the new story that you're making. So, yeah, we didn't get to some of these. Character is soon to be an extinct animal. I like that. Yeah. So, when we finally came, we actually have a lot of animals in this play now. I wrote the outline. It turned out to be quite long. Again, like Dream Like a Dream, my outline was 29 pages. This wasn't quite so much. It was like 16, so I was saying, if 29 pages is 8 hours, 16 pages is what, So what we're doing now is we have 4 acts, and the first 2 acts are about 3 hours. So we're going to, I've stopped my creative work here, and we're just rehearsing like director, actors, Sandra is leading a team of design students to do the design. We're going to be performing April 26th to 28th in the Hearst gym, a nice dance studio in the Hearst gym, and we're going to do it in the surround. And we're going to leave acts 3 and 4. But if you come and see it, we'll give you the outline as you leave, just so that you know what happens after. So I think that's fair enough. And Sandra, would you like to talk about the design process for this?
It's been very interesting working with the design students here. They're wonderful, brilliant students. I'm so impressed. But it's also a challenge, this element that we're calling organic design, or everything is developed simultaneously, because they haven't experienced it. But I have to say that they've really sprung into action when the moment was there. I have coached them to say, watch the improvisations, because you have a very unique way of developing a play. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Sure. The outline is written for the purpose of having scenes that the actors can improvise on. So in a way, I'm not writing the dialogue on purpose, and I'm using the class time, the rehearsal time, to write the dialogue. So why don't I pull up a bit of the outline so that you can see what it looks like in class or in a rehearsal.
I would just mention, if you've been trained in design to understand that there is a fixed thing and that you can solve a list of problems, working this way can be very challenging until you get used to it, and then it's so lovely, because you are able to be part of the process as it develops.
So this is what the outline looks like. Why don't it doesn't let me? Okay, let's look at Act 2. Movement 2, New York. So circling Manhattan streets, JJ narrates, it's 10 years later in New York. Actors circle clockwise at a fast pace. We don't improv. That's like a physical exercise we try. Some pedestrians attempt to go the opposite direction, but are brutally denied by the unfeeling stream of pedestrians. They reluctantly get back and continue circling. This is just something then in maybe 10 minutes, we try it with the actors. They know what they're supposed to do, and then we leave it there. Jing says she is now a travel tour guide in specialist travel to ruins, but she chooses special ruins, places of great achievement that have now been destroyed, like Nalanda in India. Okay, let's look at 2.2, Noodle Shop. Lower East Side, Pema runs a noodle shop with her daughter, who is also named Deke. The original Deke, you'll see in Act 1. Deke comes home from school and helps in the shop. There is some tension when Pema finds that Deke's grades aren't that good. As for the noodle shop, the noodles are good, but the business isn't. Location is problematic. Lease is almost up. The landlord enters and gives Pema an ultimatum. Other potential leasers come to look at the shop. So that's just what I wrote. And then in the classroom, I would just be calling the students, Pema, Marianne, Deke, Jolin, all right, now, you will be the landlord, you will be the new leaser, you are a noodle shop customer, come on, settle down, come into the noodle shop, and the actor playing Deke, you wait on the side, wait till I cue you. And so I'm setting up a scene, basically. In the old days, when I had time, when I had like 7 months to work on a play with 2 actors, the 3 of us would just work in a room and we would work without an outline, without knowing what we were going toward. But here, with so little time to work, and with actors who are not necessarily versed in improvisatory creation, this is what I do. And I told them it happens fast, and if you're not producing, I'm just going to drag you along. And I told them that, and in a kind way, but in a kind way, because And it works that way because I'm also improvising. So when I say, okay, noodle customer, talk to Pema, and all you need to talk about is business is not good, but you love the noodles, go. And then they start talking. I mean, if you're an actor, you can do that quite easily. And then I'll be going like this to Deke and go. And then Deke enters at a certain moment. And of course, everyone is taking this down. We have assistants who's taking everything down. And then Deke enters and she doesn't say anything. And Pema says, how was school? Not going back. What happened? And I go to Deke, go, just go. So she goes into the room. And that's great because that wasn't how I planned it. But that's what she does. And then she comes back and then Pema says, help with the garlic. We need to chop the garlic. And she says, they called me garlic hands. Okay, these are the things that come out of the improv. And so that's great. They all become part of the script. And then she's chopping the garlic. And then the landlady comes in. And this is a very simple scene to construct. And it takes, for me, Christian, I don't know how long it took me, half an hour to do this scene at most, 15 minutes. We're done. And then I get a transcript of what it was, and then I edit that transcript, and that's the scene. See? Let's see if we can find a more difficult scene. Check this out. In Times Square, Dorje tells stories of the Pure Land. He competes with musicians and other storytellers, one soothsayer who is getting people to join his UFO cult. The world will soon be destroyed and the aliens will bring them to the promised land. And when we did this, it's complicated because when you get more than 3 people, improvisations are difficult to do. And then we stop and we say, wait a minute. We have an actor who's doing the UFO cult, and we say, so what is the name of the planet? And immediately he gave me a name. What was it? Nemethia or something like that. Nemethia. And he said, it's a real name of a planet. And then I said, how did you know that? And anyway, I changed the name to Nenthia, which I think is a pretty cool name for a planet that they all think they're going to go to, and they're all going to, yeah. So anyway, this is how we work, and we've come to something that I think is quite interesting. And Sandra and her team have to react real fast because it does happen fast. And normally in the professional theater, Sandra already told you what the normal practice is. As a designer, you get a script. And then you analyze the script, and then the director tells you want this, how do you want it, and then you do it. You design it. Here, the script doesn't exist. It's being cooked every day, and it changes every day too. So often, I see it in her face. She says, "We need a meeting," and then no, we don't need a meeting, because the meeting is not going to mean anything.
Our meetings are in the car, me saying, well, and then we arrive at Jacob's. You're very busy, but it's very beautiful. I wish they could see a bit of the script as it comes out.
Sure,
because the outline is wonderful, and we certainly work from that. But everyone is just amazed at the way the actual script reads.
Well, I've been doing it long enough. That's why I'm pretty efficient in it. That's all, So we have time for a few questions. Yeah, Peter.
Thanks. Thank you. And I had this question when you were describing your improv process with professional actors as well. So let's use the noodle shop scene as an example, right? And I really appreciate the way you describe. You create effectively a scenario where you call an outline, and then the dialogue is generated by the actors, right? And improv as a technique requires a certain confidence and a certain ability to generate language and so on. But it also, at least in my experience as a director, requires the character to understand the world that they're traveling in.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you were to say to your actor, you're making noodles, they would have to know how to make noodles, right? Or if you say to your actor, the landlord, how do they understand how to work from a position of knowledge or lack of knowledge? Do you see my question?
Totally.
If a character is to be somebody, they have to know what that somebody is like.
And that is the key, Peter, because in my normal practice, I spend a lot of time developing the characters before we do an improv, maybe weeks. You know, we spend as much time as we need to make sure we know exactly who this character is. The other day, Sandra was saying, Marianne, who plays Pema, why is she always doing this? And I said, yeah, that's something I didn't get to, because that's her, when she thinks of working in a noodle shop, that's what she thinks of. And I said, sorry, I mean, the Tibetan noodle shop, those noodles are already there. And so it's more like grabbing the noodles and throwing them into the pot, you know. So it's things like that.
In the professional environment, I guess, as I understand it, then you're spending a lot of time on character development before the improvs happen.
Exactly.
A sort of understanding.
And
who
we
these
did that
people
here
are.
too. We
Right,
did that here
okay.
too. But of course, we can't have that much time to do it here. Since I'm working with the Tibetan culture, we did give assignments to the students to tell us about Tibetan things, and then I would, of course, augment that with my own experience. So we did spend some time, but and I'm. Yeah, just Tuesday we have a wonderful Tibetan musician who came in to teach us the song and dance, and the students are smart, they're learning it fast, you know. So, yeah, sure. Other questions? Yeah, up front here. Hold on a moment. Yeah.
I wonder, when you were writing this outline, were you like thinking in Chinese or English? Because for me, when I think in Chinese, it's hard to completely translate it into English. So,
good question. I really don't know. You know, it's sort of, I don't know. I sort of go back and forth. I get inspirations in my dreams, actually, and I was thinking, was that English or Chinese? I don't know. People have asked me, do I dream in English or Chinese? You know, so. But the idea is we're doing this in English, and so all of the idioms, all of the language is very contemporary English, the way it's spoken here. And then I'm going to have trouble translating a lot of it back to Chinese. We're planning on performing this in December in Shanghai. Let me just give you one example. The character called Time, we did one improv with the character called Time, and I told her, I said, you're Time. And so basically I led that improv. There wasn't, she wasn't able to do much because it's all in my mind. And so she meets this guy who can talk to animals. And he says, who are you? I'm Time. Oh, your name is Time. I'm Time. What do you do? I do. That's the dialogue. And in Chinese, you can't do that. You can't say I do, right? You can't say. So I don't know what I'm going to say when it gets into Chinese, but it works in English. And there's another character called Chance. And when the guy meets Chance, who are you? Oh, I'm Chance. Oh, your name is Chance? No, I'm Chance. I'm your Chance. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah, good.
Hi, I have like two questions.
Sure.
So like the first one is, so I remember like when you're talking about like organic design, I kind of like thought it was like similar to like Zimmerman's like improv, like how she said that like she would go into rehearsal without like any script or outline. So like is it like actually similar, or is it just like they just resemble each other? And then my second question was so since you're gonna do like a dream in Hong Kong, is it gonna be in Mandarin or is it gonna be in Cantonese?
It's going to be in Cantonese. Yeah, Cantonese version with English subtitles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh wait, so is it a play still?
Yeah.
Oh, like kind of like Dreamers, how they had like English, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first question, I think it's similar because Mary doesn't go into rehearsal with nothing in her mind because she's working on a Greek mythology. You see, and those stories are in her mind. That's why that is, to me, is like the same as having an outline. Like you have a story for a certain myth, then you work on it, on different aspects of it. It's depending on how loose or how you know, structured this is. And as you see, I work with very structured outlines now because I know we were, you know, pinched for time. Yeah. And with that, I think we are pinched for time. One last question. We have little time. Yeah. If there are any. Oh yeah, okay, yes please. Pei Ting.
I have a question for Sandra, which is, since your work is so visual, whereas Stan seems to draw a lot on stories that he's heard, where do you get the ideas for some of your staging?
I think that that what Stan said earlier, we find the play, and I think that your stories say about the man burning the paper. I think that I go around all the time, everywhere I go, looking, and when I'm working on a particular project, you see things that have a texture or a feeling, or that strike you. And as you mentioned, they don't go directly to the stage, but ultimately there is a quality of what you're trying to put down. It gets closer and closer to that feeling that you see in the rehearsal, that you share with the director or the choreographer. And then that's when you kind of know it's right. So.
And in the language that I've set up for the creativity lectures, that means that Sandra is taking very good care of her files every day in life. And then when you're actually working on a project, Pei Ting, then you sort of hone in, you zero in on certain things, and you don't know what they are, but you are looking for something. You know, when you're actually working on a project, it's like all of your body is open, and you're open to anything. You're looking for things. You don't know what you're looking for. And then you see them. And that is like drawing from the source, as I say in the creativity lectures. So when you're open, then you can access that source, and then you can access the outside world, all the things you're seeing, and how they tie into what you're doing, basically. Yeah.
That's exactly how it feels. Almost like you see everything, but it's a little bit on the grayed out, and the thing that something pops forward. It's the right feeling. It's exactly like that.
Thank you, Sandra, for coming to our class. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Thank you.